Good morning and welcome to the press briefing of APTA's Transform annual meeting. We have some members of the press dialed in today. Operator, can you please provide those on the phone with instructions?
For all of our dial-in participants, if you would like to ask a question, please press the star and 1 on your touch-tone phone. Again, that is star and 1 if you would like to register to ask a question today.
Thank you. My name is Nuria Fernandez, and I'm the newly elected chair of APTA. I'm also the general manager, CEO for the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority in San Jose, California. Thank you for joining us today here in New York City, home to North America's largest transit system and the city that many consider the epicenter of public transportation. I am honored to be here with fellow transportation leaders from APTA and New York City's, soon to be joined by New York City's Metropolitan Transportation Authority, as well as other invited guests. As public transportation leaders meet here in New York City, we're focused on a variety of priorities which align with APTA's new strategic plan, which was approved on Saturday by our board of directors. Our commitment is to lead public transportation in a new mobility era and focus on 4 main strategic priorities: advocating for increased investment in public transportation, new mobility services and technology for our systems, workforce development for a future-ready workforce, and enhancing safety, security, and the resiliency of our infrastructure. To drill down just a bit on these areas, we're seeking greater investment in expanded services, in new technology, in safety and security, and in state of good repair work. We're also pursuing our innovative thinking to make our services more integrated, more flexible, more efficient, more resilient, with always a focus on our customers. We're in the people-moving business, so we are always exploring opportunities to expand the discussion around public transportation that connects people to places. And one of the best ways for us to do this is by partnering with other organizations who understand the importance of public transportation to our economy and the country. Transit-oriented development is a growing area of focus for cities that want to improve mobility by access to transit where people live. And that is why we're pleased to have leadership from the National Association of Realtors and the New York State Association of Realtors with us here this morning to discuss highlights from the new joint APTA-NAR study, The Real Estate Mantra, Locate Near Public Transportation. That report examines the impact of public transportation on real estate property in 7 markets across the country. And the results reiterate to policymakers the importance of investing in public transportation infrastructure. I can tell you about my own agency because we're faced with such a housing crisis in Silicon Valley, and we're taking aggressive steps to encourage development around the transit systems, and we have a very specific policy addressing the requirement for affordable housing. I would like now to introduce Paul Skoutelas, APTA's President and CEO.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this press conference. Nuria, thank you for your remarks. Nuria already mentioned one key item that our board of directors approved over the weekend, and I'd like to mention just one additional one that's very important to us as an industry and as an association, and that's APTA Surface Transportation Authorization Recommendations, which our industry has been working on for the last 2 years. It is the new law that's to replace the FAST Act that will provide federal funding for not only public transportation, but for our roads and bridges across the country. These recommendations for the next Federal Surface Transportation Authorization Act reflect the consensus views that we've been able to bring together from our diverse membership. Our future as the backbone of the new mobility in this new environment that we're functioning in is riding on a piece of legislation that will provide new, bigger, better authorizations and appropriations for transportation, and specifically for public transit. And that law expires, as it's known, the FAST Act, September 30th of 2020. For the past 2 years, we've succeeded in winning record or near record levels of funding in Congress. We're very pleased about that, but there are so many unmet needs that really do need to be addressed, and we're working hard to make sure that our voice, our industry voice, is heard very loud and clear in Washington, D.C. From Capitol Hill to cities and towns all across this country, there's a growing realization that public transit is the necessary connection. It's the connective tissue for an integrated, multimodal lifestyle to be successful in our cities and our communities. The public gets it. They really do. They understand that it's critically important. That's why all across the country, voters have taken very positive steps to approve ballot measures to build or expand rail and bus services in their own communities. As Nuria has said, innovation and investment are at the very top of our industry's list as priorities. We're innovating how we operate, how we serve the public, in very diverse cities and communities like Dallas, Portland, Oregon, St. Petersburg, Florida, here in New York City, of course. We're seeing greater integration of all the modes, and in particular looking to partner, provide more expansive services with these new mobility options that have come our way. Ticketless fare collection, for example, downloadable apps, real-time information. These are all being embraced by our public transit agencies, both large and small, all across the country, in order to improve the services that they deliver. And we're investing in our industry, not only with public dollars, but with private funding as well. Critical to our success is state of good repair work that's underway in many of our legacy systems. Of course, here in New York, Washington, D.C., Boston, Chicago are great examples. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. But all of us, I think, in the industry take great pride in knowing that progress is being made to modernize our systems, make them a lot more reliable, which is really what people expect, and to also provide expanded options throughout our cities and communities. So a lot is going on in our industry, and I can't cover more than that in the few minutes we have together, so I'm going to turn it back to Nuria.
Yes. Thank you very much, Paul, for that overview, and if you could just lead us now in the discussion of the report.
All right, thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you a bit more about this report that I think you'll be very interested to learning about. In fact, the report has confirmed the critical role that public transportation plays in determining real estate values. We're very excited today here at this location for APTA to be releasing this new report, a joint research study with the National Association of Realtors. It's entitled The Real Estate Mantra. And this is a copy of the report. I think many of you have it there in front of you. Those that are by phone would be happy to get it to you either electronically or a hard copy. But it's a terrific report that really looks at the impact of public transit and real estate and the relationship of the two. The study shows that commercial and residential real estate market sales thrive when residents have mobility options that are close by. Neighborhoods that are located within a half-mile of public transit, good, reliable public transit, outperform those in further areas than that. The report explored 7 different metropolitan areas, very different in their makeup: Boston, Massachusetts; Eugene, Oregon; Hartford, Connecticut; L.A., Minneapolis, St. Paul; Phoenix, Arizona; and Seattle. Those were the case studies that were looked at. All of these cities provide access to various forms of rail, whether it be light rail or commuter rail or heavy rail, and also bus and bus rapid transit services. The research has found that residential properties within these areas had a higher median sales price of some 4 to 24% higher between the years 2012 and 2016. Those were the study years that were examined. Commercial property values also experienced gains from 4 of the regions saw the median sales price per square foot increase between 5 and 42% in areas, again, close to public transit. Those are very significant findings and something I think that certainly we all take note. A few key takeaways from that I'd like to make mention of before handing it over to my colleagues from the real estate industry perspective, and that's that people living within a half-mile radius of public transit have lower annual transportation costs, have access to a greater number of jobs within a 30-minute commute, and have connections to far more destinations. I can just tell you as one individual, I happen to live in Washington, D.C. I'm an empty nester. I live within the district. We have excellent service available to us, bus services and rail services. We don't own a car. My wife and I commute by the bus and the metro, and yes, we add in a taxi cab or an Uber once in a while, but that's how we do our commute, and I'm pleased to remind my wife that she is saving a lot of money each year by not having to rely on the private automobile. So transit does work very, very well. Transit-oriented neighborhoods are often more walkable. They provide more retail opportunities, more amenities, and they include a higher percentage of households with, again, less reliance on private vehicles. In these 7 regions, on average, a household spends between $2,500 and $4,400 less per year on transportation costs. That's very significant. Families can really benefit. So the benefits of transit go beyond moving people from just point A to point B. They create value, They result in influencing development and business location decisions. Businesses have long recognized the benefits of locating near transit to attract employees and customers and to save parking costs. Again, this creates additional ridership for the systems, reduces automobile travel, and benefits the environment through less carbon emissions. Supporting further public transit service expansion along with these land use policies can further improve and propel housing opportunities and grow local and national economies. So there's a lot here in this report that, again, we're very pleased to provide to you. I'd like now to turn to our colleagues to hear from the first Vice President of the National Association of Realtors, Charlie Oppler, and also next to Charlie, the President of the New York State Association of Realtors, Moses Serum. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining us today, and love to hear your perspectives.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and share some thoughts with you. Needless to say, the information you're getting today has a lot of specifics. Both Moses and I will give you some anecdotes and how it's helped us. My brokerage is right across the river in New Jersey, and we're in many areas, including Jersey City, Montclair, places where you have transit hubs. Transit is now more of a community amenity and a necessity than ever before. Not just the cost savings, it now allows for a destination point for people to live, where once cities were taboo, schools weren't what they are now, the ease of the community is not what it is now, and the desirability has changed 100% from community to community. Montclair and Jersey City are two real destination points in New Jersey, and the workforce is still here from New York City. I think one of the most important things that we're looking at the National Association of Realtors on behalf of myself, President John Smaby, and Vice President Vince Malta, is the government involvement. We now have, and when I say government, just not on the national level, on the local level, the zoning process and the permitting process that has taken sometimes years to approve has to be streamlined. We're working with communities throughout the state and also on the national level to look at the permitting process. How can it happen quicker? Because there are so many opportunities for developers to be involved in the cities and to take advantage of the savings on the commute, the job workforce, the increased prices. 10 years ago, what the amenity was, well, if you live near a Starbucks, your property was worth more. It's not the Starbucks effect, it's everything. Also, it gives us an opportunity as a community to serve middle housing. You know, not the $1 million neighborhoods that we have in some of our cities, but an opportunity for 1 and 2 bedrooms. As Paul said, for somebody who's now an empty nester, the need for bigger space has gone away. It's now the comfort of being able to be close to transportation, to be close to your community and where you want to spend your evenings, the ability to have a lifestyle that's conducive to an empty nester or somebody that wants to be closer to work. Parking is the biggest change with the process. When I started in this business 40 years ago, any new development, the ratio was two parking spots for every 1 apartment. Now we have zoning changes taking place in communities where it's a 1-to-1 ratio, and sometimes it's even less. And the reason it's less is because of public transportation, whether it's rail, whether it's light rail, as in Jersey City, which takes you to the ferry service, bus transportation, all of the new modes of transportation, which aren't new, but they're certainly better serviced, have allowed the parking requirements to be much lighter, and that allows for better development. And of course, looking at the zoning to be more flexible for multi-unit housing in desirable neighborhoods. So a lot of things are taking place from community to community, but I think the most important thing is now to look at transportation and hubs in mass transportation areas as an amenity. It is now a place to be your next residence instead of staying out in the suburbs. So we were excited to work with APTA on this report. I think there's a lot of good information. Certainly, I could talk about the 7 specific communities, but I think you've heard that and you all have the report. The additional income opportunities, the proximity to jobs and to employment are all critical factors from our standpoint in looking at where values are from community to community and how they're increasing in certain spots and decreasing in others. Transportation and infrastructure continue to be a driving force. Moses?
Thank you, Charlie. I think what I wanted to add, hearing the reports and you have, the documents prepared, I think just giving some life scenarios, being a New Yorker and practicing realtor, it took me under 45 minutes from the borough of Queens to get here today, and it's a long ride if you were to choose any other method of transportation. I mean, it could take you an hour and a half easy from Queens into Manhattan, and taking the New York City subway was under 45 minutes from door to door. And that's just a huge lifestyle choosing that most of our clients and customers choose. That's the number one question. How close are we to public transportation? And it's just because you can get so much more done when the travel time is so much reduced, or the reliability of being able to do all your texting and everything while traveling and not having to worry of being pulled over or fined for texting or parking or ticket on the street. So that's the core of many of our clients that are looking for this type of setting, is where is the closest transportation, and being able, as our President Paul mentioned from earlier, it's also the walkability, being able to walk to amenities, short distance, and being able to use your bike instead of, the congestion of having a car and all that. So I think that's the message that I have primarily from clients who are looking for this. And as Charlie mentioned, that the zoning and the regulations that needs to come forward to accommodate the needs of our clients that are looking for this setting in their housing needs.
I just wanted to add one thing. I think what this report, which took many years to put together, allows us also to seek the input from our policymakers in D.C. when we go, or certainly in our states, to show them how important mass transportation is. This is not just a practitioner saying something. We have to have the ability to have access to our policymakers, and both in Washington and respective communities. And that's a big part, because from the National Association of Realtors, we spend a lot of time on the legislative front to protect private property rights and open doors for more people to enjoy home ownership, or in the case of some that want to also rent closer to work, that's also important. So the access to the policymakers is a critical point for us, and this report now gives us the data that we need to make our points even more succinct.
I guess the takeaways, of course, are the convenience, the quality of life, and then the catalytic effect that public transportation has on development. And I'm so pleased to hear, and thank you very much for your participation and contributions to the report. We in public transit understand the value of having mobility and bringing mobility closer to where people live to get them to where they need to go. So with that, I would like to ask that we open it up for questions from the audience first. Yes.
Misha Wanik-Lippman with Mass Transit Magazine. What's the thinking behind these specific study years, and how did you determine these 6 cities, or 7 cities, to focus on?
Yeah, I'm going to ask Paul.
Yeah.
to-
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. First, this is an update of a study that's about 6-7 years old, so we're updating the information. Secondly, in terms of location, trying to get a diversity of community. So it's one thing to talk about New York. New York is critical. It is the epicenter, right, of transit, as Nuria has said. But it's one community, one city in the country. So looking at places like Phoenix, which is not considered to be a transit hub necessarily, although they've done quite a bit of investment in the last number of years. Eugene, Oregon, a much smaller city. West Coast. So we look to try and look at a variety of different locations in order to get their experiences rather than just one single type.
Are there any, oh, would you like to add to that?
No,
Any further questions?
I think
from
that
the
covered
audience?
it.
Okay. Oh, yes, please.
Janice Tarzan, Metro Magazine. When Amazon was looking for cities for their second headquarters, public transit was a big part of that. Do you feel like that sort of confirmed, this study, showing the value of real estate near public transportation?
I would tell you that I think if you looked at the list as it was created of the 25, their first cut-through, it was all near transportation, mainly for the workforce. And then obviously the availability of space to do what they wanted to do. But when you look at Washington, D.C., metro area, New York, Newark, and many other cities that were included, Dallas, another one, so that I do think that was their main issue, mainly from a workforce standpoint, even before the facility side.
Was there anything surprising that you found that came out of the study, or maybe it was the data, or?
I'm not sure anything surprising, quite frankly. It really did underscore what we believe to be the case, because, we're very close to what's happening around the country in terms of public transportation. Amazon's been mentioned, and we use it often as an example, because it's a high-level example of just how important public transit location is. But quite honestly, at APTA, we continue to list all of the different companies that we are tracking that make decisions in large measure because of the availability of good transportation and public transit. So State Farm Insurance is just one that comes to mind immediately, that's made big building location decisions around the country, and they have done that again with public transit very much at the heart of their decision-making.
And just from a practitioner side, it just confirmed to me, when you see the development that's taking place in New Jersey, specifically where my brokerage is, the dollars are being spent in the cities from neighborhood to neighborhood, and it's now focused on closer to New York City and working its way back, where in the past, people would be looking at leaving the city to get to the suburbs for school. Now it's been the opposite. And again, the work, the opportunity to be close to work and to be within a half mile of public transportation, it just really confirmed everything that we see. But now it's easier to sit with a developer or with a town or city to say, here are the facts that used to be testimony from a planner or an engineer. We now have another level that we can go to.
If there are no further questions from the audience, I'd now like to ask the operator if she would open any questions from those on the phone.
As a reminder, that is the star and 1 keys to ask a question. We'll pause for a moment to allow any questions to queue. And it appears that we have no questions from our dial-in participants at this time.
Thank you, operator. Well, I want to thank everyone today for coming to this unveiling of our report, and also to thank you, the presenters, for your insightful thoughts and recommendations. I do believe, coming from Silicon Valley, that real estate is of great value to all of us, but that real estate is improved with good mobility systems. And I live in an area where there's a preference for the automobile, but there's also realization by a lot of the large corporations that you cannot have 30,000 people driving to work and finding a place to park them, and that their core business is about ideas to market, not about transportation. So having that partnership certainly is going to start to make a difference in where decisions are made for location and then how people move and where they live. So thanks again to all of you for being here today.
Thank you, Nuria.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.